This affordable housing, CMHC Housing Solutions presentation is presented by Jeff Colabash. He's a specialist with Ontario Multi-Unit Client Solutions for Northern Ontario. He's the representative for Renfrew County and the City of Pembroke. We welcome Jeff this morning. We'd like to thank the Pembroke Local Affordable Housing Committee, the Affordable Housing Alliance of the Ottawa Valley, and we want to thank the City of Pembroke and the County of Renfrew, who are partners in this presentation and coordinators. Working together, we can find solutions for affordable housing in our area. So the presentation is around 50 minutes. You can ask questions during the presentation. There will also be, we have to finish at noon. So whatever time is left over at noon will be for question and answer also. So Jeff, welcome, and you can take the show away.
All right. Thanks, Brian. I appreciate it. And thank you to the city and everybody else on this call I know everybody's taking time out of their busy day to sit on this call. As Brian said, it's about 50 minutes or so, another 30 minutes for Q&A. If we get finished earlier, then I'll give you some time back to yourselves. But feel free to ask me questions as we're going through as well. And if some people are not comfortable asking me the questions, my contact information is with Brian. It will be at the end of this presentation as well. And feel free to reach out and send me an email, and then we can have a discussion as well. So that usually happens when I do these types of presentations. So no worries on that. Just a little bit of background to myself. So as Brian said, my name is Jeff Colabash. I am the one of the multi-unit client solution specialists for the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. I'm based out of Sudbury, Ontario, born and raised here. But my territory starts in the district municipality of Muskoka, goes all the way up to the Ontario-Manitoba border. The reason I'm working with the City of Pembroke today is one of my colleagues, Pierre Gagnon, is actually on an assignment right now, so I'm covering him for a few months. So that's why I'm in front of you today, but it doesn't mean that I can't provide you the service as well. So that's what I'm here to help you with as well. So I won't delay this anymore. We'll get right into this. What I'm trying to do today is basically to promote our CMHC programs, and I'm basically your first point of contact for new clients and also for existing clients when they're looking at doing affordable housing within the province of Ontario. We can work with you to try and find the right financing solution for your project. And as I indicated earlier, please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions about our products, whether it's today or subsequent to today's meeting. So, Brian, we can go to next, please. Okay, so the National Housing Strategy represents a shift in what CMHC has been doing before. The housing strategy is about people, building safe, affordable homes, and giving priority to those in need. And it's also about communities, where we align our supports with public investments to deliver on identified local needs. And we want to support investments that address climate change, accessibility issues, and obviously affordability. We also look at, under the National Housing Strategy, we look at partnerships. So we advocate for transparency and accountability in all of our partnerships, whether that's with the private sector or the nonprofit sector, and also between federal, provincial, and municipal governments. Next. Oh, just 1 minute. Sorry, I'm probably there we go. Okay, so basically the National Housing Strategy is a vision for social inclusion, including, as I alluded to earlier, affordability, accessibility, access to support services, etc. So all of those points up there that you see, those are some of the key points when we're looking at our funding programs, that we have requirements under the funding programs, and they vary from program to program, of some of these social outcomes that we're looking at. Next. And so the National Housing Strategy is about people first. So we do have priority groups that have been identified. And this is an important part to ensure that the social outcomes that we're looking for can reach down into the community. So you can see some of those priority groups, and it covers quite a few. And depending on the program, sometimes we have programs such as our Rapid Housing Initiative that we just finished our round 3 a while ago, where the focus was on, women and children. So it's very important that when you're looking at our program parameters, you have discussions with myself or Pierre as a client solution specialist as to ensure that the priority group that you're seeking funding for is one of our priority groups as well under the National Housing Strategy. Next. Oh, sorry. Next, Brian.
Okay.
So all of our programs, in a general sense, follow this prioritization criteria. We support the populations that are in need, so those are the vulnerable populations. The programs must include a depth and duration of affordability, access to amenities, have accessibility features, and support energy efficiency goals. The partnerships are a central feature of the National Housing Strategy, and most of our programs require that the federal funding must be supplemented by investments from another source or partner, such as another level of government, to ensure coordination of investments. Now, this can mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's more capital dollars going into a project, but at the city level, for example, maybe there's planning approvals that are expedited. We've worked with communities where they've deferred taxes for 10 years, or they have waived taxes, or maybe they've waived development charges, things like that. That can be considered part of the partnership as well. So that's not an issue. Next. Okay. Brian, I'm just thinking if you can maybe just expand that screen a bit, just to make sure we're having everything. Second, see if I can.
Good.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect. Thanks, Brian. So how do we actualize the social outcome priorities of the National Housing Strategy? How do we deliver on some of these social outcomes? Well, we have financing and incentives that you can see to ensure project viability. For example, the lower interest rates. And I know that's a big issue right now. And maybe I'll touch on that right now. So when we do our programs, there's a viability assessment sheet that is required as part of our application. And that will indicate, basically the project budget, what the affordability numbers look like, what the income is that is coming in for it, et cetera. So when we deal with interest rates, we basically have a viability interest rate. So right now, those interest rates, we get different rates every Thursday, basically. And so when we have applicants that are coming in and they're looking at doing a program, then we look at what the viability assessment rate is, and then we ask them to basically put that in as their CMHC qualifying rate, even though the rate, if they locked in, once we go to first advance, it would be lower. For example, last week's rate, I think was about our viability assessment rate, which was about, I think it was about 4.4, 4.5%. So that would be the qualifying rate in the viability assessment calculator. But if you were locking in, say the same day, but the locking in of the interest rate is only done at first advance. So if we were locking in, for example, if somebody was locking in on that date, they would be locking in at about 3.2%. So there's about 100 basis points between the viability number that we give you and then what the locked in number would be if somebody was locking in that date. So those are very fluid. So if we're working with a client today and we say your interest rate is 4.2, but then they don't submit, say, for 6 months, that can happen. They have to reach out to us and find out what the interest rate is at that point, because maybe it's 5.2 or maybe it's 4 or 3.5, whatever it may be, because it's always changing. So it's just like when you go to a bank, they'll only lock you in for a certain amount of time, but we don't lock anybody in at the beginning. We basically lock in the interest rate once we go to first advance on our funding. So the financial viability is obviously top of mind, and we want to ensure that projects are sustainable over the long term and align with our appetite for risk. Before I carry on, I just want to let everybody know that a copy of this presentation will be sent to all the attendees, so you don't necessarily have to make notes on everything. Hopefully everybody will be able to just concentrate on the presentation. Partnerships, when we have multiple stakeholders, it reflects a local consensus about project viability and broader expertise around the table. So it could be the province, it could be the municipality, it could be community organizations, it could be developers, it could be innovators. Affordability, depending on the product, we have different criteria for defining affordability, but we ask that borrowers make a commitment to maintaining that affordability. It's depending on the program, it's set for at least 10 years, sometimes 20 years for that affordability. Energy efficiency and accessibility, there is different criteria depending on the program for these social outcomes as well. And then we also have different financing incentives to make it feasible. So sometimes we do provide a little bit of contribution dollars, which is a non-repayable loan that can help. For example, under co-investment right now, we can go up to $25,000 per unit for contribution. So that can help somewhat with some of the viability. We had higher contributions before, but with the funding, we only have so many dollars, so we have to work within the parameters of the budgets. Next, please. So some of these programs and products can be stacked. So for example, co-investment fund and the mortgage loan insurance select, these two programs can be stacked. Our programs can also be stacked with other programs from other government sources at the provincial and municipal levels, or organizations such as the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and, for example, their Green Municipal Fund. So when we do stacking, we just don't allow for stacking of federal dollars. So if there was a program that had federal and provincial dollars, okay, we would allow the stacking with the provincial dollars, but the federal dollars would have to remain out of that stacking because they're not allowed. It's like a double dipping right into the federal dollars. Next. So I'm here to talk about some of our CMHC products and offerings. We have a range of initiatives that span the full housing development process from pre-development to project stabilization. In some cases, the program is designed to address the pre-development phase and assist with soft costs, as is the case with our seed funding program. And other programs can also span from the pre-development phase all the way through to the rent-up stabilization phase. So that means if you have soft costs involved in some of the programs that you didn't seek seed funding, that those soft costs can be part of your overall budget costs when you're putting the viability assessment together. Next, please. So CMHC offers a wide array of housing solutions in the housing continuum to tackle the issues at play in each segment. Our products also span all housing types. However, some initiatives are designed to apply specifically to some types of housing while not applicable to others. So today I'm going to speak at a high level to seed funding, the innovation fund, the housing accelerator fund, co-investment funding, rental construction financing, and our mortgage loan insurance select program. Next, please. So seed funding, this has been a very popular product. It is the funding program that deals with the pre-development costs of what we call soft cost funding. Okay, so it's intended to support the pre-development stage, basically to help determine project feasibility and get projects off the ground and into our application pipeline. Due to the overwhelming demand for seed funding, a large number of applications are awaiting to be processed. We're in the process of doing that right now. Because of the large number of applications, we had to close our seed funding application portal in March of this year, March 23rd of this year, to process the current volume and to ensure we do not surpass our remaining budget. Now, because of the volume that we had from last year and up to March of this year, we've basically gone into our 2022-2023 budget, and we're into our 2023-2024 budget. So what that means essentially is if we don't have any more funding coming to us from the government, and we've used all the money allocated under seed funding, that we would only open the portal again in 2020, April 1st of 2024. Okay, so applications for seed which have already been approved will continue to receive funding as per their agreements. So this program, the seed funding program, affects the seed, but it does not affect our preservation fund, which deals with those proponents that are or were under a federal operating agreement. So that type of funding for that is still available. Okay, and then there are also some changes to the way seed funding is being delivered, and I'll provide a quick overview of the pre-development funding to make sure everyone is aware of what we can offer. Next, please. Okay, so seed funding can provide non-repayable contributions and/or interest-free loans to assist with the planning costs of building a new affordable housing project. It can also provide contributions to help preserve existing community housing projects so that they remain viable and sustainable, which is what I just alluded to. So there's two funding streams. The first one is a new construction stream, which supports costs for completing pre-development activities related to the construction of new affordable housing supply. Our maximum contributions there for co-ops, nonprofits, indigenous groups is up to 40% of the total approved funding to a maximum of $150,000, whichever is less. And then our maximum loan, which is interest-free, we can go up to $350,000. And depending on the application, we may need security to be provided, but I haven't seen that in my files that I've been working with. The preservation stream, the maximum contribution available to carry out eligible preservation activities is up to $50,000 per community housing project. The maximum amount could be increased to $75,000, where the housing provider can clearly demonstrate how they provide housing to a greater number of low-income households. Sorry. Next, please. Seed funding may be available to a wide range of individuals and organizations, as you can see on the left-hand side of the slide. However, seed preservation is only open to community housing sector groups who were previously under a federally administered operating agreement, or to those transferred under a social housing agreement whose federal operating agreements have ended. Next, please. So as I have mentioned, the application window closed on March 23rd of this year. And during this assessment process, where we determine how much money we have left for new applications, CMHC is also using this amount to change the way seed funding is delivered. And I'll explain that to you now. So next, please. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Brian. So effective March of this year, where we have applications that we're dealing with that were previously submitted, and anything moving forward once we have our portal open again, we're providing funding using an incremental approach based on what stage of development the project is in. This new staged approach allows us to work alongside our clients and offer funding as they move their projects along. It also allows us to support projects earlier on and continue to offer funding without the need for detailed resubmissions. This will allow us to better track spending and align with our budgets. To that end, one big change to the program is that once an application is approved, invoices for funding must be received by December 31st of the year the application is approved. So that includes if somebody was coming in today, for example, and they were given an approval, we'll just say September 1st, they would be required to provide invoices that work has been done between September 1st and December 31st. The intent here is to better track spending and have a better sense of funds remaining in the budget line, which will help us smooth out the process and avoid any future budget shortfalls. So we've heard from proponents, there is a frustration with the level of uncertainty, like having to ask clients to reapply under new funding streams when money runs out or funding being reassessed midstream. And these issues should be mitigated by this redesign. So at stage one, what we can do is we can go up to $20,000 in contribution. Stage 2, we can go up to $60,000 in contribution. So when I say contribution, that means we use the word contribution. Most people know it as a grant. So that's basically grant money. And stage 3, we can go up to $60,000 in contribution. And at that point in stage 3, we can also go up to $350,000 in an interest-free loan. Okay, so we can also do that. And just some of the things that we look at for the various stages. For example, stage 1 can be something like analysis of need and demand, a business plan, preliminary financial feasibility, special purpose surveys, even consulting fees. Okay. Stage 2 is what we call the schematic design. Some of the typical activities in this stage are accessibility modeling studies, energy modeling studies, environmental site assessments, geotech reports, planning fees, preliminary design, professional appraisal, site surveys, etc. And then in stage 3, which is the preliminary design or design development, some of the activities that we see completed in this stage are a completion appraisal, construction cost estimates, contract documents, development purpose, permits, engineering studies, financial viability report, project drawings and specs, and in addition to a quantity surveyor. Before I move on to the next one, are there any questions on seed funding that maybe somebody has right now, or you can wait till the end or contact me later, whatever you want to do? Any questions out there?
I have a question on the seed funding, if you have a minute.
Sure.
You mentioned in stage 1, like you guys will go up to 20,000 and the various levels at different stages. What is the factor that determines the amount you will go to? Is it a percentage of the costs, or how is that number calculated?
So they have a formula that they use internally, like with our financial solutions team. They're the ones that basically underwrite all of these program funding parameters. So there's no set way of them looking at it. But so what happens is the client will come in with their seed application, and they'll say, like, we're in stage 1. These are some of the studies that we want to get done. And before this is happening, we're also telling the clients that this is what you're eligible for under stage 1 up to the 20,000 contribution, so that they have a good idea that if they're coming in with something that, let's just say that at stage 1 they're like $40,000, depending on what they're looking at doing, we can go up to the 20,000, and depending if it's something that we look at in stage 2, we may go a little bit higher, but I haven't seen that yet. But it's a brand new way of us staging this. So there's no real set way of saying that if you do this, if you do A, B, and C, that you're going to get up to 20,000. It's on a case-by-case basis. So it's how the projects are looked at and analyzed by our financial solutions team that will determine what that contribution is.
Okay.
I know it's not clear, but it's something that they do internally with financial solutions. And if there's any questions about it, so say you only got $15,000, and your question, you say, look, we need that extra 5. How can we do it? Or whatever. Like, we can continue those conversations even when you find out. You say, okay, well, that's fine, but I really do need this extra 5. And then we can have a discussion, and then I can take it internally to financial solutions and see if there's any wiggle room that they would bring it from the 15 to the 20. And that's why it says up to for everything, because it doesn't mean that everybody gets the 20 or the 60 or the 70K, depending on the stage. But so we try to work with the client as best we can. But what we do is we do look at if somebody's coming in with a certain study and it comes in at 10,000, but we look at benchmarking for the province, and those are usually like 4,500 or 5,000. Then they will look at that. So they'll go, okay, we can provide 5,000 for that study, but we can't go to 10 because that's not what the norm is out there. However, depending where you're located, to get those studies done and to bring those consultants in, there's a cost involved because of distance and when they have to come in. So I deal with that quite regularly in Northern Ontario, where my clients might be Northwestern Ontario. So they might be up in Kenora or Thunder Bay. And like even in Thunder Bay, some of the consultants, they have to, depending what has to be done, they might have to be contracted from Toronto, for example, or maybe Sudbury. Even that's a stretch. So there's additional costs there, and that's part of my justification with Financial Solutions, working with you as a client, of why we need some more money, because it doesn't necessarily do the same fit, because not everybody's playing in the same field here. Southern Ontario is totally different from Northern Ontario, as is Eastern Ontario. So, but we can look at that on a case by case basis. So we're constantly in conversation with you about it. So, it's not a be all end all, but we'll see what we can do if there's more money that is required. So just that example between that 15 that you got and you really need that 20. Does that help out a little bit?
Yeah, it does. I'm looking at it thinking of a project we have right now. We're at basically stage 2 currently with two 36-unit buildings, and we're already just shy of $250,000 in soft costs. To get us to stage 3, we're probably going to be, 4 to 450,000. So I
Yeah.
mean, the funds you're talking about are certainly beneficial, but what worries me is that, you sort of can't count on them. But if I was looking at it from a feasibility sort of study perspective,
Mhm.
I'd want to be able to sort of figure some of that in, but I would sort of have to hesitate. So I would just be worried that maybe projects are being shelved prematurely because it is a little bit uncertain, or there isn't sort of a set formula to sort of factor in a little bit more concretely. But I
Yeah.
can understand where it's hard from your side as well.
Yeah, and because our budgets are limited, right? And just before I carry on here, all of our funding programs are national programs, so you are competing with everybody across the country. So that's why part of my role and Pierre's role is to get as strong an application in as possible, so that we can access as much funding as we can for the particular project. So for that one in particular that you're talking about, if you were looking at, just say, starting work on this, then you can't apply for seed right now because the portal's closed, but we would suggest that, okay, maybe we can look at the seed funding. But if you're doing the development the stage you're at right now, and it's going through, and just say, for example, you're going after our co-investment funding, you can use that soft cost that you spent so far. We'll say 400,000. You could put that as part of your costs incurred already on the project. So that's part of your project budget. Okay. So even though the seed's not there and you've spent the money, you can still have those soft costs built into the other programs where you're going for the capital money, because soft costs is a line item on our viability assessment that you can put in there. Now, if it's something that was done 5 years ago, probably not. But usually within the last year or two, we have some flexibility, so we can take a look at it. So even though you've spent the money, if you go after any of our funding programs and you're doing the viability assessment calculator, you could put in there that on that line item for soft costs of what that number was and what those costs were used to the studies that were being done to incur those costs. That help out a little bit?
It does. It does. The one other thing, because you mentioned some of the stuff is somewhat of a degree of competition. What I'm hearing from other developers is that they're in essence being rejected because proximity to public transit and stuff. Would you feel that maybe we're at a disadvantage in some of these areas competitively against Toronto or Ottawa or
No,
Montreal?
yeah, my feeling is pretty strong on this, that we're not necessarily at a disadvantage in the areas that we live and work, and we want to get these developments in. And that's why we have to work very closely with you in order to get that strong application. But it doesn't mean that Toronto and Vancouver and Montreal and Ottawa gets all the money. That does not happen. I've had seed funding for my area where small projects like 10, 15, 20 units got seed funding. So it's
Okay.
on a case by case basis, but that's part of our role as a client solution specialist to work closely with you to try to, again, to make it a strong application and try to see if we can access as much funds as we can based on the parameters of the program. And the parameters of the program help you determine how much money you're going to get too. So if you're just meeting, and we'll sort of touch on that as I go through the other programs, if you're just meeting the bare minimums of the parameters of the program, the chances of prioritization are lower than if you go above and beyond what those minimum requirements are. Okay, so that makes it strong. Even against a project, say, between Pembroke and Toronto, if you're coming in and you're more than meeting those minimum requirements, deeper level of affordability, et cetera, then your opportunity for prioritization is stronger than an application, even from Toronto, that doesn't mean anything like that they're just coming in, you know.
Good to know.
Okay, yeah. So we're here to work with you to try to get those strong projects. And I know my area, I can't speak for Pierre, but I'm sure he's the same, but I fight for my area all the time because I just feel that we're under a different people look at us differently, and being in Northern Ontario when they're looking at projects. And it's really about educating, you know, the people that are reviewing these and making them understand. And that's why we have the close relationship with you as a client to make that strong application. But when we have issues where we want to bring the financial solutions team in, we will bring them in on calls so that they can hear it straight from the client of what the issues are, because it's not a problem for me to be that conduit, but the problem is they need to hear it right from the client as well. And so that's why on occasion I will bring a financial solutions person in on these calls so that they get a greater understanding of the community and of the needs in that community. And part of the application process that I advise my clients is to basically provide a summary report, like an executive summary of what you're doing, a little bit of history on the community. It just gives the financial solutions team a better understanding of everything around that community and the proposed development. Because sometimes these people, they might be, let's say they're located in Ottawa or they're located in Toronto, but they don't necessarily know the community that they're working with, right? And without the information that's just in the application. Whereas when you basically tell the story in an executive summary, it gives them that better understanding. And it's very well received by financial solutions because they see what everything is about in that community and that proposed housing development. Any other questions on SEED? Okay, hearing none, I guess we can move to the next page. And so the next one is just the affordable housing, not just, sorry, it's the Affordable Housing Innovation Fund. You can go to the next slide, please, Brian. So this fund, the Innovation Fund, encourages new funding models and innovative building techniques in the affordable housing sector. The fund was first launched in 2016 under the name Affordable Rental Innovation Fund, but it has been recently renamed to reflect an expansion to eligible products beyond just rental. Okay, and innovation is the core criteria of the fund. Without innovation, we cannot give financial assistance. Next, please. So the Innovation Fund draws on 3 established degrees of innovation. There's the incremental innovation, which is minor improvements in existing products and services or processes. These improvements are things we tend to see nearly every day as businesses look to remain competitive and profitable. These new and improved innovations can be easily visualized and quickly communicated. The next one is breakthrough innovation, which brings meaningful change by providing something demonstrably new, which pushes beyond the new and improved incremental level. These innovations provide an instant competitive edge for a while. However, competition usually adapts to match or exceed these innovations within a relatively short period of time. And the last one is the transformational innovation, which typically turns the existing processes, products, or services on their head, which may even make those previous processes, products, or services at risk of becoming obsolete. Given the disruptive nature of transformation innovations, they tend to be championed by individuals who are not connected closely to an existing product or service. So they give you that, another set of eyes looking at it. So when we look at innovation, when we look at these incremental breakthrough and transformational, so I always use example, if somebody's coming in and they say, I have an innovative product. So, okay. And then we say, so what are you doing? Well, I'm putting up some solar panels and I'm changing the windows. It's not innovative. It's been done all over the place. Okay. So, some of the stuff that we've seen is different building techniques, things like that. And it could be financial stuff as well. So there's a lot of different parts of innovation, and what I do with people that are looking at innovation is the client will put down, this is what I'm thinking of doing. They put something in writing to me. I review it, and then I run it by the innovation team. We have a discussion about it. And then usually what we'll do is we'll reach out to the client and have another call about it to make sure that the innovation team has a full understanding of it and whether it would meet the parameters of the program and whether they would think it would be beneficial for the client to bring in that particular application. Because at the end of the day, we don't want to waste anybody's time on any of these programs. So that's why there's all of this pre-consultation beforehand. It helps us ensure that we have a strong application for that particular program. Next, please. So basically, in a nutshell, what we're doing is we're seeking unique ideas to revolutionize the affordable housing sector and new ways of making housing more accessible and lowering the costs and risks associated with housing projects. So the fund covers both new construction projects and the repair and renewal of the existing housing supply. Next, please.
I have a
Oh,
question.
sorry. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Would this cover modular home construction? I've been contacted by a couple of companies about modularity, fast homes, modularity, lower costs to put on the ground. Is that something innovative?
Well, it's innovative, but the thing is, it's already been done. So the modular home building is out there already right now. In fact, our Rapid Housing Initiative program was looking for that type of build as part of that, one of the requirements that they do modular builds within a certain building time frame. So modular homes wouldn't be considered innovative for this program, but if you're looking at doing an affordable housing development using modular, then we would look at one of our other programs, either co-investment or possible rental construction financing or mortgage loan insurance select. So it wouldn't fit under this, but it may fit under one of our other programs, looking at the larger capital dollars for such a development. Okay.
So the innovative being green technology, homes and all that, in some kind of a community development?
It has to go beyond what's already out there right now. Okay. So that's what it has to do. And we have to ensure that it's not only good, say, for example, it's not only good for Pembroke, but it's good for any community of any size across the country. So we're looking for things that can be replicated across the country as well. That also makes it a strong application under the Innovation Fund.
Okay. Thank you. And Nadir has a question.
Sure.
Hi, everybody. This is Nadir from North Algona, Wilberforce. I'm the owner of 18-unit motel, and there are some units which I'm renting for people like affordable housing, using as an affordable housing and dealing with many different communities like ODSP, Ontario Works, Pembroke Grinds and stuff, committees like that. Mm-hmm. This funding program is, anyway, my motel is considered as a commercial. So is this funding is only for commercial or also goes for residential only, or goes also for commercial?
No, this is all for residential, but in your particular case, so it wouldn't fall under innovation, but we would look at it if you're looking at converting that motel to all residential, where it's going to be all affordable housing, then we do have programs that would help with that particular conversion.
Like, so I have a motel with three different buildings. One have a units, other have a 5 units, and other have 8 units. So it's a 3 different buildings. And
Mhm.
one of the building is I'm planning to make a second story on the top of it. I just got the structural certificate from the engineer saying like my foundation is all right to support the second story.
Mhm.
So that second story won't be the 5 single units. It's going to be like 3 1-bedroom apartment, and it's going to be on a long-term lease, like an apartment rather than motel.
Mhm.
So am I eligible for this funding or?
Yeah, you'll be eligible for one of our funding of the other funding programs for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
And one thing with all of our programs is we have to look at a minimum of 5 units. Okay, so
Okay.
that's definite. So you're meeting those parameters,
Mhm.
and then putting that second floor on as well.
Mhm.
What we also have to ensure as part of any application coming in is that the zoning is in place that allows for it, and we would need that
Mhm.
confirmation writing from the city or town or whomever it is
Yeah.
that handles the
Mhm.
planning.
Yeah.
So we would need that, but definitely what you're thinking of doing would be eligible under our program. So I think what you might want to do is maybe put something in writing to me, very detailed of what you're planning on doing, where it's located, all that information. Send an email off to me, and
Sure.
then let me sit with it and work on it and see what the best fit with that particular proposal would be, and we can have a follow-up call on that. We can take offline from today.
No problem. I'm dealing with the people like coordinator from North Algona Belvoir Force and the building inspector, and we're on a very good term. And I just received the structural inspection report from an engineer. So
Okay.
sure, I'll send you an email. I'll get your email later on. And
Sure.
sure, I'll send you the details and with some pictures possible.
Yeah, okay, yeah, whatever information you have, yeah, please forward it to me.
Sure.
I appreciate
Thank
it.
you very much for your time, Jeff.
Yeah, no worries. It's all good. Any other questions here?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay.
It's Ish Teilheimer. I'm with the Affordable Housing Alliance of the Ottawa Valley. We're one of the organizations involved in organizing this meeting. And I'm in Golden Lake. We applied for this program in May, and I don't believe we've heard anything back. So first of all, I'm wondering what what long it's going to take, how long it's likely to take before we get a response. And secondly, I'm hoping that you think that our approach is innovative, and what our approach is to bring together a number of rural municipalities to for joint efforts. We have local committees formed in about 8 local municipalities in Renfrew County and the city of Pembroke, and we're hoping to get funding for a consultant coordinator who can lead and work with all the committees in all the different municipalities. And we certainly feel it's an innovative approach, and I hope that you'll feel that way too.
Okay, so if you can maybe send me some details on that, basically what organization sent it in, because I'll have to do a search in our system to see where it is. So you said it was a few months ago?
It was in May. And one of the person who actually completed the application, Cameron Montgomery, is on this call as well. So I'm hoping that Cameron can forward that information.
Yeah, if Cameron is, if you could send me the information, because I'll just have to dig into our system to see where it is, what's happened with it, and then maybe I'll have to prod a few people if you've been waiting since
Yeah,
May.
we'll get it. We'll forward it to you.
Yeah, send that to me, and then I can take it from there and do a follow-up and see what the issue is.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, anything else? Okay, we can move to the next slide now, Brian. So this is kind of what we've been discussing about, you know, the innovative solutions, such as new financing models or unique designs, that overcome barriers and lower the costs and risks associated with housing projects. Secondly, you know, that's what I alluded to about at least the 5 units. Renovations or retrofits must be considered affordable. And then under the innovation fund, as well as the applicants demonstrate how the project will remain affordable for at least 10 years as well. So that affordability, that minimum 10 years, is basically with all of our programs. But under co-investment, it's actually a 20-year, it's 2 10-year terms. Next, please. The fourth criterion is demonstrating how a project will achieve a minimum 10% decrease in energy intensity and greenhouse gas emissions. Fifth, at least 10% of the units meeting accessibility requirements. Sixth, units demonstrate that they can be viable while decreasing or eliminating the need for ongoing government subsidies. And finally, applicants receive a higher score if their projects show added value in terms of replicability, access to transit, or serving vulnerable populations. And I know the access to transit is an issue, but just so you know, it's not something that is worth a lot of points, if you want to call it that, in the overall assessment. So if there was something on proximity to, you know, transit, it wouldn't be something that would be like, well, that's like 20 points or something like that. It might be 1 or 2 points. So it's nothing that really impacts it, but they have to look at it because it's part of the parameters of the program. So let me see. Okay, now we could go next, please. Oh, sorry, one more, Brian. I forgot to ask you to do next. Yeah, I apologize for that. The next fund is a housing accelerator fund, and you can now go to the next slide, please, Brian. So this fund is a $4 billion contribution that's going to run until 2026, 2027. This one was just introduced this year. The program encourages local governments to implement initiatives that will speed up housing development and increase supply. It will achieve this through incentivizing lasting systemic changes that reduce barriers to housing supply and development approvals, and over the long run, make housing more affordable to everyone living in Canada. The expectation under this program is will result in at least 100,000 net new units permitted over the life of the program. So the critical distinction between this fund and other CMHC administered programs is this fund is more akin to a bilateral agreement with another level of government. So CMHC is not directly providing funding or underwriting housing projects under this. Okay, so, and right now, what's the application window for this actually just closed on August 18th. The applications that were in the window and they needed more time they're being extended to September 29th, but no new applications will be accepted after August 18th. Now, what I see with a lot of programs is they do it once and then they see, okay, maybe we need to do it more, or maybe we do another call out window because our call out windows were too short. That could be a possibility here, but there's no guarantees. But anything under the Housing Accelerator Fund, I'm not responsible for it. So if there's any questions on that, I'm gonna have to ask you to forward it to that Housing Accelerator Fund team. But you can still send me your question, and I can give you the contact information for that team should you be interested in this. And this particular program, so you can go to the next page, please, Brian. So the eligible applicants on this are local governments within Canada, including First Nations, Métis, and Inuit governments who have delegated authority over land use planning and development approvals. Okay, so you have to have that particular authority in order to apply for this. And in the absence of a municipal level authority, a regional district or province or territory that has authority for land use planning and development approvals can also apply. So if there's two-tier governments where you have a district and then or a county and then the local municipality, if the district or county, for example, are responsible for land use planning, then they would be eligible to apply. And there's two streams, the large urban, which is basically populations greater than 10,000. And then the small rural, northern, and indigenous are populations less than 10,000, or within one of the territories or an indigenous community. And that's based on our 2021 census data. Next, please. So in the applications, and I know because it's closed, but I still just want to go over this with you just so that you're aware of it. Should they open it up again? The applicants are required to provide certain information in their applications. One of them is an action plan, which has the prescribed number of initiatives. There's initiatives for the large stream and also initiatives for the smaller stream. Applicants are encouraged but not required to select from a list of initiatives that reflect common practices in urban planning. Examples of initiatives within the applicant's action plan can include allowing for increased density on a single lot, encouraging accessory dwelling units, incorporating a climate adaptability plan to the official community plan, inclusionary zoning, etc. The initiatives that the applicant proposes must demonstrate alignment to the development of complete, low-carbon, climate-resilient communities that are affordable, inclusive, equitable, and diverse. The application, you must also commit to a housing supply growth target within the action plan that increases their average annual rate of growth by a minimum of 10%. And then the other one is they must complete or update a housing needs assessment and include a reoccurring schedule review date within the report to ensure that the needs assessment is being kept current. Next, please. So the evaluation of these applications is based on 4 categories, and they are commitment to increase housing supply, relevance of the initiative outcome to one or more of the objectives of the Housing Accelerator Fund, the effectiveness of the initiative in increasing the supply of housing, and also the need for an increased housing supply. All initiatives outlined in an applicant's action plan will be individually assessed and scored. However, for prioritization purposes, only the top initiatives for each stream will be considered. The evaluation criteria will be used to assess the application and determine which applicants are selected to participate in the Housing Accelerated Fund. It will not dictate funding amounts. Even though I can't answer real questions on that, if you have any questions on that, I would advise you to send me an email, and then I'll give you the contact information for the Housing Accelerated Fund team. Even though the window's closed, you may still have questions, and I can still forward them on. Next, please. Oh, sorry, was there a question? Okay, I thought there was. Yeah, okay, thank you, Brian. So this fund is our National Housing Co-Investment Fund, is basically our flagship fund. And we do have a new option now for Black-led organizations under co-investment, and I'll do a quick refresher on that in a minute. So the National Housing Co-Investment Fund is about addressing the demand for the most vulnerable, and can be accessed by municipalities, district social service boards, indigenous governments or organizations, for-profit developers, nonprofits, etc. Given the nature of the projects, the funding may include limited or grant contributions. As I've indicated earlier in this session, right now under co-investment, we can go up to $25,000 per door for contribution or grants. And the housing co-investment, the National Housing Co-Investment Fund, provides low-cost loans and financial contributions, but this is a loan-first program, so you will be looking. That's primarily what it is, even though we do have room for some contribution. So, and then I alluded to how the interest rates work on that, and I can touch on that again. In terms of the minimum, oh, sorry.
I just have a question.
Sure.
Does this include co-op housing, or is that a separate fund?
No, we can look at co-op as well, but we do have separate funding for co-ops depending what the co-op is looking for, but we do have separate funding for co-ops.
Okay.
So,
and the other.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and if there's specific questions about co-ops, I would again advise you to send it to me, and I'll make sure it gets to the right person within the corporation in Ontario that co-ops.
Okay, and somebody wanted me to ask a question that isn't here. When you fund a project and a developer is building 10 units, and if 3 of the units, 30% or 4 of them, 40% are going to be affordable housing with a guarantee of 20 to 25 years of affordability, according to your requirements for the definition of affordability, do you fund the whole project or you just fund those units?
No, our funding will be for the entire project. It's not just for affordable. So like under co-investment, we will have a minimum of 30% of the units must meet the affordability definition. But if it's say a $20 million project and half was affordable and half was market, we fund the whole project. We don't just fund the affordable.
So that's
Okay.
where the incentive is for the developer to get the better interest rate
Yes.
through you?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll be very transparent here. Because of the rising interest rates that affect everybody, including us, our interest rates aren't what they were like 2-3 years ago. I can give you an example. For a rental construction financing project I did just in this particular area, just outside of Sudbury, when they locked in their interest rate on their first advance, which is about at least 2.5 years, they're at 1.2% for the first 10 years. Whereas the same program, because of the interest rates right now, somebody locked in today, for example, they might be locking in at 3.2. So, which is a big.
What's the rating? What's the 3.2?
Yeah, if they were locking in today, but the viability on the spreadsheet that you put in your application would be right now would be 4.2. But if somebody was locking in today, they could be at around 3.2, could be a little bit less. But that's kind of when you're looking at the viability and we give you a rate to put in the sheet as 4.2, then you can say that, okay, so it's basically 100 basis points above what you may be locking in if you're locking in that day. So the interest rates have affected everybody, and it has, and we can all read it. It's all out there. It has slowed growth of housing because of those interest rates. It's not just at our level with our funding, but everywhere when people are going to lenders, right? The interest rates are all higher, and it's a lot more difficult to make some of these projects happen without more contribution dollars coming in. It's something that I've been advocating for quite a long time, that we get more contribution dollars out there. I think we're going to have more housing built, but then there's a cost to doing it, right? About where do those contribution dollars come from? Because they come from the Canadian taxpayer. So it's a really fine line that we're walking on that, but we still try to do our best with what we have, with what we're working with, and we want to work with the client to help them as well. Anything else on that? Like just at this point, anyway. I've got more information here on Kauai. Okay, hearing nothing. So in terms of minimum requirements, all projects, as I indicated earlier, must have a minimum of 5 units or beds. The primary use has to be residential. So I think it's under co-investment, no more than 30% of the gross floor area can be used for non-residential. But that's how some of these projects work, is they have the affordable units in there. They also have the market units in there. And then what some of these buildings do is they build in some commercial space to allow for leasing, which will help the viability of the project in the long run. And some of the things that they do is they lease it out to areas where there's support services for their clientele that may be in the building. For example, it could be for seniors, or it could be with individuals with developmental or mental disabilities. And so we have some of these clients will put support services in the building so that they're not only helping their clients, but they're also helping with the viability of the project. So on this page here, the funds can be used for urban Indigenous community housing, community and affordable, mixed use of market and affordable, new construction and or conversion, which we talked to earlier about with one of the attendees, transitional and supportive housing, in addition to shelters. So there's quite an array of housing that this particular stream can be used for. Next, please. Okay, so okay, you know what? You can leave it there. I'm just going to go over something quickly anyway. So under new construction, the minimum investment for CMHC is $1 million. So basically, we're looking for projects that are more than $1 million for the new construction stream. Okay, and under the renovation stream, we're looking for the minimum investment from our perspective of $250,000. Okay, so if you're coming in under those numbers, then we'll see if there's something else that can be done that could, not that we want to increase what you're paying for the construction, but just that maybe there's another way of bringing it, say, above that $1 million, and maybe you're going to make it more viable because there's going to be a place to lease in it or two places to lease in it for support services or whatever it may be. But that's all part of us working with you. I don't think I've seen any project come in under $1 million, not these days, not even for 5 units. It's very expensive. We all know that, right? So on this particular page there, we do have the minimum requirements, and applications are scored on social outcomes and additional criteria aligned with government priorities, such as the needs of target populations and meeting aspects of social inclusion. Again, we talk about access to public transport, any type of services in the area, etc. Partnerships are a central feature of this particular fund, where we must be supplemented by investments from another level of government. And that's why I said, it could be financial or in kind as well. And we work with you on that. We would say, okay, so have you talked to if it's a developer or a nonprofit, have you talked to the city? Have you talked to, the province about is there any funding out under their various programs that can come into play here? So that's part of the conversation. More often than not, it's a very easy conversation because we know what is out there and what can help. So then what we do is some clients will ask us, can we sit in on a call or a meeting with yourselves, like basically I'll just call it as the developer and the city, to discuss what your proposal and where CMHC fits in and what we're trying to see, so that they get a better understanding from CMHC of what our program is all about and the parameters that we're looking at and the social outcomes that we're looking at as well. Affordability must keep rents for a minimum of 30% of the units below 80% of the median market rental rate, and they must commit for a minimum of 20 years from occupancy. Okay. And that's 2 10-year terms. So what happens under co-investment, we can go, I'm probably getting ahead of myself, but we can go up to 50-year amortization. The first 20 years is with CMHC, where we're lending the funds. We have 2 10-year terms. So at first advance, we would have our funds locked in at an interest rate for 10 years. And then when that 10-year period is over, we open up that agreement again and we look at interest rates and we adjust it accordingly with respect to the interest rates at that point in time. After the 20 years under co-investment, then you would be required to go to a traditional lender for whatever is remaining on the mortgage. And like I said, when you could go up to 50-year amortization, it makes it a lot more viable, but you still have to look at, okay, if interest rates change, what's going to happen here? So sometimes what I've advised clients when they're looking at the viability assessment calculator and they're putting in their qualifying rate with CMHC, just as our buffer between what it actually is, and then another 100 basis points on top of that. What we're trying to do there is basically give the client an indication of, you might want to stress test it for, if it's 4.2, I will tell the client you might want to stress test it to 4.5, just in case the rates go up incrementally, that you're still viable. They don't necessarily have to put that in their application. They can leave it at 4.2. But if they stress out at 4.5, they get a better indication. Some of my clients will go even higher than that. just internally for their own purposes to stress test it to see what it would mean in the long term. And that may mean, based on the funding that they have, that they may have to hold off on a bit until the interest rates come down a bit, even from our end. But with our programming, you're not going to find a better interest rate than what we have, unless you're a really good preferred customer of a lender where they can give you traditional financing without going through us. Energy efficiency, we look at the new projects must demonstrate that they will either achieve a 25% decrease in energy consumption and greenhouse gas emissions relative to the 2015 National Energy Code and the 2015 National Building Code, or a 50% decrease relative to 2017 National Energy Code for buildings. For accessibility, there are two options. 20% of all units within the project meet or exceed accessibility standards. Access to the project and its common areas is barrier-free. And option 2 is the entire project has full universal accessibility design. So the energy efficiency, greenhouse gas emissions, and accessibility are very important parameters of the program. In fact, they're very important parameters of all of our program. So when you see those numbers of affordable 30% of units, energy efficiency 25%, accessibility 20% of units, what I advise my clients, and this is what I mentioned earlier, if you're coming in at the minimums, and there's other projects out there that are coming in that are going above those minimums, and some that are going well above them, they would be prioritized before a project that only meets the minimums. The minimums are there, and maybe that's all you can do. But we have to advise our clients that if you come in higher, your chances of prioritization are stronger, but not guaranteed. But they are stronger because we look at projects right across the country. So it's not just for Ontario. And on that note, we don't have specific funding for Ontario, just so you know. We're the funding we have access to is a pool of funding for the entire country.
I just have a question on partnerships, part of it. Is there a minimum requirement? So if the city of Pembroke or the county of Renfrew had land to donate as equity, so say they had land that was valued at $200,000, $300,000 for a $10 million project or something, is there a minimum requirement that the partnership person has to contribute?
No, there's no minimum. Depending on what the partners contribute to it, whether it's financial and in-kind, that will determine how viable your project is when you start crunching all the numbers together. So we don't have a minimum. If it's a $10 million project that we require 20%, no, it's not like that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay. Next page, please. Okay, thank you. So as an interest, a 10-year term at fixed interest rate, renewable after another 10 years. So our loan to costs, we can go up to 95%. Okay. 75% for non-residential. We can advertise over 50 years, and the debt coverage ratios like 1.0 and 1.4 for non-residential. Those have to be met as well. And they all come out when you start crunching the numbers. Now the loan to cost up to 95%, just so you know, not everybody that's why it says up to 95%. Very rarely do I see them going that high. I think the highest I've seen is maybe 93 in my projects, but more often than not, I'm seeing them about, 80, 85%. That also bodes well if there's more funding that is coming into the project, like being injected into the project, outside of us, that also strengthens your application as well, because you're not looking for as much money from us. And when you're not looking for as much money from us, it means that we can use that funding to help other projects throughout the country. So, but that's a part of our, we would talk to you about when you're putting the viability assessment calculator together. We're working with you on that as well. So no worries on that. And as I indicated earlier, up to right now, up to maximum of 25,000 per unit for the grant on this program. Next page, please. Okay. So this is we have launched our co-investment funding dedicated to Black-led organizations. So there's $50 million over 5 years that is, available to Black-led organizations both public and private, to build housing for Black households and increase the capacity of these groups to build in the future. So if you're aware of any Black-led organizations in your area that might be interested in some of this funding, then I would advise them to take a look at it on the website, and also to be in touch with us to let us know that they're interested in it, and we can work with them on that. Next page, please. So I just have a couple of projects that were announced. One's in Nova Scotia, another one is in Montreal. This is just some of the projects that we've announced. There's many more projects that we did with a co-investment fund. You can see some of the points in this: the 16% greenhouse gas reduction, accessible beds, sorry. 858,000 in co-investment fund. And then you see the partners. So they had the province. They also had I'm not sure what I think the CB is, not sure what that is, the CB part.
Cape Breton.
Is that Cape Breton?
Yes, I believe so. Cape Breton Community Housing Foundation.
Perfect. Oh, it says it right down below in my notes too. I apologize. So you see that there's partnerships, right? So when we're sitting with clients and we're talking about their project, then we're also talking about, okay, any partnerships out there. And that's where we say, okay, maybe get in touch with them. If you need us at the table when you're having those conversations with those potential partners, we're more than happy to be at the table with you, whether it's in person or virtual, to just, again, to let them know where CMHC stands on these, and and how the program works, and that we're seeking these partnerships, and and that we're supporting the project, etc. So that's important to know. The next page as well, Brian. And then this is the one in Montreal. I'm going to let you know, even though this is on page, but we don't have basically a slide deck for the one there's one right now that's being built in the city of Sault Ste. Marie. It's a Legion project, and they got co-investment funding from us. It's 108 units for the Legion. They are primarily, the units are all being used by veterans in the area. They also have part of the building is being used for what they used to do at the Legion. So they have their hall and their kitchen and things like that. So that's all part of the building. It was a long process because it was during the pandemic, so we couldn't meet, and there's just a lot of hiccups that way. A lot of back and forth. So these projects, just to let you know, once the application comes in and is considered officially submitted to, we basically get to our agreement signed and everything, you're probably looking 4 to 6 months minimum. Sometimes they can be expedited faster depending on the nature of the application. So, just keep that in mind. And we'll talk about that when an application comes in as well with you. So this particular project in the Sioux under co-investment, they actually tore down the existing building in August of 2022. And they will be fully occupied by the end of December of this year. They have leases for all of the units, signed leases for all of the units right now, and they have a waiting list of 300 already for that building. So we all know the nature of housing and how much more housing we need. So this is a really good situation for the Sioux. And especially getting that, 108 units for veterans is very important. It's almost like a prototype I don't think it's been done for the Legion across the country. So maybe we'll get more units like that as well, or more buildings like that. Next page. Hey, I'm getting tight on time here. Sorry about that. So the next one is the Rental Construction Financing Initiative. And basically this one supports sustainable apartment projects in areas where there's a need for additional rental supply. They do give higher priority to projects with access to public transit and partnerships between for-profit and not-for-profit developers, urban indigenous groups and municipalities, as well as having projects having other government supports and land donations. Next, please. So the rental construction financing offers low-cost loans during the riskiest phases of financing development, whether it's construction, rent up, and stabilization. We have, unique financing features such as fixed rate construction takeout loans, and we can do also concurrent mortgage loan insurance as well. We have a 10-year term with one low interest rate and a 50-year amortization period available. So after this one in rental construction, once the 10 years is up, and that's where you need to keep it affordable for the 10 years. After the 10 years, then whatever's remaining on the mortgage would have to be taken out with a traditional lender. So this particular program complements and is compatible with local affordable housing programs and initiatives. It provides incentives for projects with greater social outcomes. And that's important again on this one. This one has a lot of take up on it. So you really have to come in with a strong application that really exceeds those social outcomes under affordability, energy efficiency, and accessibility. So those are very important that you're coming in above that. And again, that's part of our job working with you. Next, please. So this is some of the parameters of the program. Markets with rental vacancy rate below 3%. That's very important. So what we do is we average over the last 3 years. So we'll look at 2020, 2021, and 2022, because that's our most recent data from StatsCan with respect to the rental vacancy rate. So we'll average it out, but it has to be below that 3%. That's very important. If you're coming in at 4 or 5%, it's going to be pretty tough to get that one prioritized just based on that fact alone. And I can attest to that because it affected one of my projects in one of my communities where they were coming in at about 4.5%. This was a few years back, and it just wasn't meeting the prep. There are other issues, nothing major, but that was one of the main ones that the rental construction financing team made me aware of, in addition to the client. So it's very important when we're going through the parameters of that particular program that we're exceeding in order to get it prioritized, because again, we're getting an influx of a lot of applications under this one. Programs must have municipal approval in progress, building permits available. So again, we're looking at zoning, make sure the zoning is in place, make sure you own the land, etc. If you have anything where you're in doing an offer to purchase, that can slow down the process. That will affect the scoring on the project as well, because it's not necessary. Because if you're having a closing and it's only, if it's 3 months away or 6 months or whatever it may be, then that affects how this would be prioritized, because it's not being a project that is being expedited. Again, 5+ units, $1 million minimum loan amount, and the borrower net worth must be a minimum of 25% of the loan amount. That one, rental construction financing, we tend to see more applications coming from developers on that one, just so the audience knows that. Next page, please. So here's one of the projects that was announced in PEI. You can see this one went 92% financing, 6% forgivable loan, 20-year operating grant. So you can see just some of the points about this one. 70 unit development, 2 floors. So the partnerships were key. The Port Corporation of Summerside provided land at a subsidized rate. The province provided a forgivable loan, 6% of total costs, plus an ongoing annual operating grant of 20 years they provided. And the city granted a 15-year tax waiver on the affordable units and a 5-year tax waiver on the market units. So there's different ways of forming these partnerships when you look at things like this. And that's why you need to have those discussions, whether it's prior to an application being considered, or as part of the application process when we're working with you on the pre-consultation side of things. Next, please. And this is one of the ones that was done in downtown Toronto, Murrish Village. And you can see the vacancy rates at that point when they were done, and this was a 2018 project. Vacancy rate was 1.1% at the time. This project included a neighborhood energy system by the district energy provider Creative Energy, comprising a block scale network that will provide reliable and low carbon heating, cooling, and power. They went above what the minimum requirements were for greenhouse gas emissions. And the one I did a rental construction financing just outside of the city here, in Sudbury, in Coniston. They had a low carbon, high performance, all electric 55 unit multi-residential building for a nonprofit senior housing corporation. And the project uses almost 40% less energy, has a 39% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, and a 33% reduction in peak demand. And this was it was $18 million in loan funding under rental construction for that particular project in just outside of Sudbury. Okay, next, please. So the last program I think I'm speaking to is the MLI Select. So MLI stands for Mortgage Loan Insurance. This is available for both new construction and purchase and refinancing. Under this one, we're not doing the lending on the project. We're actually just doing the insuring of the project. So process is you would apply, you'd have the first conversation with us, we'd let you know about the program, and then you would apply through an approved lender and commit to providing social outcomes in return for better financing options. Okay, and this one is based on a points-based system. Next, please. The points-based system is based on the three priorities of the program, which are affordability, climate compatibility, and accessibility. Next, please. So the product, MLI Select, will offer greater levels of flexibility and incentives that are commensurate to commitments made on affordability, climate, and accessibility. And they have the option, you have an option when you're going through this program to commit to a custom blend of outcomes, which lets you tailor the outcomes to fit the project, but it doesn't mean you have to meet all of the outcomes, and I'll touch on that later. Okay, next, please. So you could see some of the eligible loan purposes, construction, improvements, purchase of residential housing, refinancing of residential housing, and purchase and conversion of non-residential buildings to residential use. Next, please. So there's the affordability criteria, maximum 30% of median renter income. And to determine that, there's a link within the landing page for this particular program where you can see what those renter incomes are for the area. 10-year affordability commitment period, and affordability commitments of 20 or more years are awarded additional points. So the minimum is 10, but if you go 20 or more years, then you get more points. Next, please. So you can see the way some of these the points work for affordability, depending on the number of units, and then the points that you can get. The most points that we can give out is 100 points. So you see under level 3, if you go minimum of 25% of the units at maximum of 30% of the median renter income, you're going to get 100 points right there. But let's just say you only do a level 2, you do 15%, you get 70 points there. But if you see on the side where it says minimum 10-year affordability period, but if you go for a commitment of 20 or more years, now you get an additional 30 points. So you can still do that level 2 affordability, but because you're saying we're going to do 20 years of affordability, now you get 30 points. Now you meet the 100 points, which is our maximum, which gives you the most incentives. And this is, and so, sorry. Oh, sorry, Brian. Next page. Next page. I apologize. Okay. This is what I was just referring to, the affordability numbers. If you go to the next page. And this is the points-based system based on the climate parameters of the program. Next page, please. And this is the parameters for accessibility. As you can see, there's not as many points under level 1 and level 2. So sometimes I have clients that are only going to be meeting the affordability criteria and they're getting their 100 points there. They don't have to worry about accessibility and climate compatibility under this program. However, based on building code requirements out there, there's a lot of the parameters are actually being met because of the way buildings are being constructed, that developers are going or contractors are going above and beyond what the minimums are anyway, just to make things more energy efficient, more accessible, so we can possibly have aging in place. Next page, please. And then you can go to the next page as well. And this sort of gives you a breakdown under new construction and what the flexibilities are there, so you can see that what you can get when you attain certain points. You can see the minimum if you go to the 100 points. Now the premium that has changed, so I apologize. It's not 1.25%. It went up June 19th of this year, and it was increased by 1.55. So now you're looking at basically 2.8 for that. Okay, and the other ones would have gone up as well for the 70 points and the 50 points. And next page, please. And then this gives you the points, what the for purchase and refi are. So what the point-based system gets you there. And the last page is my thank you. So just want to finish by saying there's a lot of experience and expertise that's probably in this room. I don't know everybody in this room, obviously, and that can be very valuable. As we tackle the problem of housing affordability, I hope that you reach out to us at CMHC and look to your communities to create the best possible outcomes for our communities and support a new diverse generation of housing providers here in Ontario. That's all I have, Brian. I just want to thank everybody for that's a lot of information in an hour and a half that you took in. You have my contact information, and Brian will send that along with this slide deck to you as well. Please feel free to reach out to me, contact me by email. We can also set up a call to discuss any of these programs and how it maybe you have a project that you're thinking about or something that's been sitting on the shelf for a number of years that you think, well, maybe there's some help that we can get there. So let's have those conversations. I think it's very important that we have the conversations and see what we can find if there's a solution that we have with our funding program that can help your particular project. And that's why, my title as a client solution specialist is try to find those solutions for my clients. I'm not sure if there's any questions, Brian, but I just want to thank everybody for taking this time out and for letting me provide this information to you.
Any other questions before I have a closing statement or information? Okay. Well, Jeff, we want to thank you on behalf of the Pembroke Affordable Housing Committee and the Affordable Housing Alliance of the Leona Valley, the City of Pembroke, and the County of Renfrew. We want to thank you, our system administrator of the City of Pembroke, Rory Toop, for making sure that we didn't have any glitches here today. We appreciate his expertise all the time here at the city. So if you would like a copy of the slide deck, just send me an email, babdallah@pembroke.ca. It's also on the City of Pembroke website under City Council. I'm the Deputy Mayor here. This presentation is recorded and it will be uploaded to YouTube under the City of Pembroke. Just go to City of Pembroke on YouTube. So we'll upload it tomorrow for your viewing pleasure. One comment about housing. We know there's affordable housing crisis all across Canada. That's why Ish Tilheimer and Cameron Montgomery led the charge for the Affordable Housing Alliance Ottawa Valley being created, which I sit on the which I sit on the steering committee and co-chair. Cameron and I started the Pembroke Local Affordable Housing Committee, and there's other affordable housing committees in the Upper Ottawa Valley. So affordable housing is a community-wide endeavor across the county of Renfrew and the Ottawa Valley. What's good for Killaloe is good for Pembroke. What's good for Pembroke is good for Renfrew. So we need to work together, and we're encouraging, this is a first step, to work with developers, municipal government, CMHC, and the county of Renfrew to collaboratively work on individual projects in your community. And that was the goal of the application that we put into the Innovation Fund a few months ago, to hire a housing coordinator, specialist, somebody who knows about housing, affordable housing, to come to each community, do a needs survey, and help work with developers and local government on affordable housing. So it's the first step. So we encourage you to contact Jeff directly or myself if you have any questions, and let's work together to create some affordable housing units in our communities across the Ottawa Valley. So that's about it, and we thank you and keep in touch. And if you'd like to join the Affordable Housing Alliance of the Ottawa Valley, you can contact myself, Ish Tillheimer, or Cameron Montgomery. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful afternoon. Looks like a sunny day out there. Over and out from Pembroke City Hall.
Thank you, Brian. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye-bye.